So in our last lesson, we were looking at using a graph and then creating a linear function from a graph. You also made the connection that a linear function is pretty identical to a linear equation. Only difference is that linear functions are not vertical. Okay, so we don't want to graph anything that is vertical. Only ones that would go without the x-axis repeating. So how do we write linear functions when we're given a table? So yesterday we looked at graphs, and today we're going to apply the exact same knowledge from yesterday, except we're going to take our information from a table instead of from a graph. So let's look at an example. And our first example has a table that looks like this. We have x values and y values. And in the table, it says -3, 9. When x is -2, the y value is 7. When x is -1, the y value is 5. And last but not least, when x is 0, the y value is 3. So our job is to then use this information to help us to find a linear function. And linear functions will be written as y equals mx plus b. We know the m. There's my green. We know the m is the slope, and we know the b is the y-intercept. So we're going to use the information from here to first find the slope. Well, we know we can find the slope by looking at our ordered pairs. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we can use these ordered pairs to help us create the slope. So first, let's look at inputs 1 and output 1. So input 1, when x is -3, your y value is 9. So there is ordered pair number 1. Ordered pair number 2 comes from box number 2, which is -2 and 7. So now that we have two ordered pairs on a line, we can now look at graphing. We can either graph and find the slope that way if you want, or you can look at using the equation. So you can use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I know some people are still confused about where these values come from, so let's break those down one more time for you. So the y values are referring to the y values that are in your ordered pairs. Here's a y value, here's a y value. This value is y2 because it comes from point number 2. So when we see y2, we're looking for y value number 2. Here's point number 2, point number 2, point number 2. So when we solve this, we're going to use these y values and we're going to subtract them from each other. So we're going to start with point number 2, which was 7, and we're going to subtract that from point number 1 of the y values, which is 9. That is where your y's come from. We're going to put that over, because remember that this is the rise over the run. So we're going to put that over the x values. Okay, so here's your x values right here in the ordered pairs. x2 comes from point number 2, which is a -2. And we're going to subtract that from point number 1 of the x values, which is -3. Now we're ready to solve. Well, we know when we have a negative and a negative, this is really a positive. So if I have -2 and I add 3, if I have -2 and I add 3, this gives me a 1. And then I have 7 minus 9, which is -2. I can simplify this down and get -2. So my slope, all of this to find the slope, gives me -2. So slope is -2. But what about my y-intercept? Well, we remember from our previous lesson that our y-intercept is where x equals 0. So I'm going to look in my table, and where I see that the x equals 0, right here, my y-intercept then is 3. So we can rewrite this linear function as y equals -2 for your slope, x plus 3, because here, right here, is your y-intercept. This is a linear function. We can use this function in order to put in x values to come out with your y value, or you can use it to put your y value in to solve for your x value, depending on what they give you. Okay, let's do another example so that you can try to see how this works and get a little bit more confidence with it. Okay, example B. So again, we are forming or writing linear equations from a table. So our next table has x and y values. Again, the first x and y is -2, -2. Then 0, -1. 2, 0. And last but not least, 4, 1. So here is the table that they would give you. And your job is to create a linear function. So linear function y equals mx plus b. So that you could graph a straight line or a line that does not have repeating x values. Okay, so our first goal is to find the slope. So let's solve for m. You can use the different points here. Let's do this one where we use points 3 and 4, and we'll talk about how those ones go. So point 3 is 2, 0, and point 4 is 4, 1. Now, y2 and y2 minus y1 and x2 minus x1. Those are the exact same thing, except now we're going to be using points 3 and 4, which you can think of still as point 1 and 2, because you come in contact with this point first on the line, this one second on the line. Or because we're only using 2 points from our table, this one comes first, this one comes second. So really this is like point 1 and this is like point 2, and we are going to work backwards. So to find the slope, we're going to again use that formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we are going to solve. So let's start first with our y values because the rise is on the top. So we're going to go to the bottom number. The first number there is 1. So again, here's our y values. So we're going to take 1 first, and we're going to subtract that from 0. We then are going to look at our x values. We have 4 first, minus 2. So x2 minus x1, so point number 2 minus point number 1 in the x spot. We're going to subtract, so 1 minus 0 is 1, and 4 minus 2 is 2. So in this problem, my slope is 1/2. 1/2. So now I need to look for a y-intercept. Y-intercept means that x equals 0. So where x equals 0, we want the y. Okay, so we're going to look over here. I run into the 0 here, so my y value is -1. So now let's take this and we're going to make a y equals mx plus b with our new information. So our linear function our equation we're going to use to graph a linear function is y equals 1/2 x minus 1. Or if you want, you could write it as y equals 1/2 x plus a -1. They mean the exact same thing. If you prefer to keep it in the plus, go for it. If you want to make it a -1, totally fine too. Okay, it is your turn now for a try it. So we're going to have you do a try it. Let me get this written out for you. So I'm going to give you the table, and your job is to create a linear function from that table. Okay, so your table shows x values and y values, and those x values and y values are -2, +2, and -1, +2, 0, and 2. Ooh, this one's weird. And 1 and 2. Okay, your job, it doesn't matter about those y values all being the same. Remember, it was only about the x values. We did not want those x values to be the same. So your job now is to hit pause on this video so that you can solve for a linear function for this table. All right, so my first job right now is to find a slope. So I need to solve for slope. So I'm going to use 2 points and solve for slope. These are both negatives. I don't really like negatives, but that's okay. I'll take 0.1 and 0.2, and we will go from there, so that way we can still see how to solve with negatives. All right, point number 1 says -2, 2. Point number 2 says -1, 2. And we're going to start with our y values. So this one and this one. So 2 minus 2 over x values, which are -1 minus a -2. And this gives us 0 over 1. So 0 over 1 and we're going to throw this into this. Oh, wait. And then we're going to look at our... So right now we don't have a slope. Remember, when 0 is on the top, it means no slope. So we're going to just now look for our b. And our b is when x is 0, we have 2. So it's going to cross. It looks like this equation then, or your function, is y equals 0 over 1x plus 2. Or anything times x, 0 times anything gives us 0. So you could just say y equals 2. Which, look at that. No matter what you do, it's always going to equal 2. Because no matter what value we put in for x, it always equals 2. All right, so how did you do on this? That was a really odd one. I'm sorry for that. They always give you guys really weird try-its. I don't understand sometimes. Okay, go ahead and answer your essential question. How do you write linear functions from a table? Put your level of understanding out to the side. And then if you have any questions, come on back to the Google Meet and ask for help. Or you may do your practice work. As always, I appreciate all of your hard work and effort, and make it a great day.